Alright, so this is my recording for the final project progress for the final app, for the final project for our mobile app class. So it's going to be update 3 for my app called Lone Hero, which is a 2D platforming game. So for the upgrades that I've done for this progress, the first one I did was adding in the background for the actual app, the platforms that the character is able to actually stand on and interact with different objects, as well as the items that the player can actually grab throughout the game. So how I did that was I added a moving background in the back, which is basically just like a rotating background that's just going to loop endlessly, so it looks like there's a moving background behind the game. I added ledges for the player to actually stand on and jump onto, as well as collecting different collectibles for the player to get throughout the level. The way I did this was using tile.io to actually grab the images and actually pull them into the file. Then I used Flame's Parallax package, which is something that Flame has, which allows you to actually get the background a depth to make it look like it's actually moving and make it more pop out, as well as using Flame's component package, which actually allows an object to move freely so that way the items don't just stay stagnant and they actually have a little bit of an animation towards them. And this took me about 2.5 hours to actually get all of that implemented in. The second thing I added in was adding in actual enemies and their movement for the enemies to interact with the player. So what I added in was a saw that would basically go up and down on the top of the screen that would stop the player from getting some items without them timing their jumps, which I'll get into later, as well as an enemy chicken, which will basically attack the player once it reaches a certain hitbox. Once the player enters that hitbox, the chicken will attack them, and if they run into each other, then the player will die and they'll restart in the game. The way I did this was using Flame's Collision and Components package, which actually allows the enemy to charge at the player when they get close within a certain vicinity. This took me about 3.5 hours to actually figure out how the collision components package worked alongside with the actual sprite to actually get it to move properly and not just fall off the screen or just go through the player. The third thing I implemented was the ability for the actual character to jump. That was actually being able to use for the player to actually jump onto platforms as well as jump on top of the enemy chicken, and that's the way you actually kill the enemy chicken actually. So the package that I used was again Flame's component package, which allowed the player to jump when prompted on tap. That's just something that's implemented inside the component package that Flame has built in. And this took me about 2.5 hours to figure out how to do that. For the next thing I added, it was the I added a start screen, which is basically just like the intro screen to any game where you just click the button, it's going to show you, it's going to prompt you with the name of the app as well as a start game button. You click that and then it sends you to the actual level. And the way of doing that was being able to actually just transfer from a start screen to the actual game using Navigator, which is built into Flutter. And this took me about an hour and a half to figure out. The fifth thing I added was collision interaction for objects, so that way when the player actually lands on a ledge, he doesn't just fall through it, or if when the chicken actually runs into the player, it actually kills them and actually causes an interaction. And the way I did that was again using the collisions and components package. This way it also allowed the player to react to objects when they get within a certain range of it. And it took me about 4 hours to figure out how to do actual collisions and interactions. The last thing I added was a checkpoint and level reset. So once you get to the end of the level after collecting all the items as well as killing the enemy, then you basically get a flag at the end of the game. And once you jump on top of that or run through the flag, a little checkered flag will pop up through a little pole. And once that happens, the level will reset itself back to the beginning. And the way I did this was using the collisions components package again to actually make the objects react when a player gets a certain range of it. And I wrote down in the code to actually make it so that once the level's been completed, that it would loop through. If there are no other new levels to load in, then it would reset the level from there. And it took me about 2 hours to figure that out. So for the actual app and what it looks like right now, this is what the intro start screen looks right now. It's going to get some edits later on, but this is just what it looks like right now. And once you hit start game, it sends you to the actual level, which is this. And as you can see, you can move around the player here. You're able to move. Once you jump down here, it actually causes the chicken to move, as well as makes some audio that I imported in. And so when you actually jump, it makes noises. So when you actually jump towards the chicken and jump on, if you get hit by it like that, then you will die and they'll send you back here. But if you actually jump on top of it, then you actually just kill it right there. And you're able to collect all these different items. And like with the chicken, if you get hit by the saw, then you get reset over here. And you can run across, jump up here, And once you get all those, and you go to this yellow fold right here, you go through, the checkered flag pops up, and it resets the level. And that's everything that's been added in so far for the app.